Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Fresh off an appearance on The View.
That's right.
This is true.
Tamika Mallory, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to see y'all, family.
How's everything? Happy
Good.
New Year.
Happy New Year, and thank y'all so much for having me on. What's up, sis? Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Tamika.
Good to see you.
Did you feel like you was under attack on The View?
Well, I mean, yeah, right? Like, yeah, I was under attack on The View. But I think a lot of people, particularly black folks who are like doing work on our behalf, are always under attack.
Absolutely.
Dealing with, Meghan McCain particularly. So it's unfortunate that she even has that type of platform. And I think it's so unfair for even the people who probably really wanted to hear from us. Like, they really wanted to understand some of the things that they don't know, and instead she just sort of took that time to try to, whatever that was. And I think she actually did the people who really have real, legitimate questions a disservice.
All right, so I'm trying to understand some things that are going on right now
Please.
with the Women's March and everything that's happening. So there's controversy around that, and I see people leaving really nasty messages and comments, and I see support as well.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how things turn, because the reason I knew about the Women's March was really because of you.
Right.
And Carmen and Linda.
Yes, and Carmen and Linda
100%.
coming up here, spreading the word about it. Tamika in particular was texting me like, "You coming out, sis? I
Right.
got
And
you."
you were there.
And I did
And you
come.
were
I
there,
made it
yeah.
out there, and I'm just wondering what changed. Like, what's going on?
So first of all, it didn't change. We've been under attack since the beginning. This has been going on. I mean, I don't know how many conversations we've had just about the treatment and the hostility towards women of color, particularly taking position. And Linda, as a Palestinian Muslim woman, she specifically deals with a lot of hate. Sometimes
Externally or internally? Or both?
Both. I think both. And I want to be careful with that also, because we have an incredible team, an incredible team of people who may not always agree on every issue, but we love on one another. We educate each other, and we have very daring discussions, and it's difficult. But there are people who are internal, who carry the banner and say they are Women's March, who do not want to see women of color leading.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was just something everyone can agree on, is that women of color had to be involved in the Women's March, because
Absolutely.
originally it didn't feel like we were included.
No, well, there was a woman, a white woman, who was a grandmother. She was the first person to put out a call. So went out to a number of her friends, and by the time she woke up the next morning, it had like tens of thousands of people who had signed up to say they were coming to the march. And so we got a call asking us to participate, and we did, but we were not willing to participate from a perspective of like just being, the help. And some people, there were some women who were engaged, who did want us to just be the help. And we had some very difficult conversations. And to Bob Bland's credit, the woman who there were 4 co-chairs when we had a co-chair structure. We do not anymore. That was for the first march. And Bob Bland, as a white woman, really, she was not nowhere near where she is in terms of her consciousness today, but she knew that something was unsettling about how these white women were treating us and the energy. And so she decided that, being that she had created the Facebook pages and she did all of the work, that she was going to really sort of side with the women of color and ensure that we were properly positioned. Our thing was, the only way we would be involved is if we were going to lead. So the platform, the speakers, the way in which the Women's March developed had to be through the eyes of marginalized communities, and it had to be our perspective. If it was not going to be our perspective, we weren't going to participate, because our position was that it's not that white women are not oppressed. We do know that white women deal with oppression, but we also know that they are part of upholding systems of oppression against people of color, and therefore we need to make sure that those people who are most impacted are first. And that, to us, is the way to heal all of society. Like, all of the inequities we deal with are addressed by, first of all, bringing the people from the bottom up. When you do that, just by osmosis, I guess, everybody else gets healed, So that's been our model from the beginning. Address the people who are most impacted, and the rest of society will rise just because.
You said something on The View yesterday that I thought was powerful. You said you shouldn't be judged through the lens of a man.
Right.
So why are they trying to make the
Right.
minister's words yours?
Well, I mean, first of all, and I shout out to my brother Mark Lamont Hill, who was up here talking about that litmus test, the litmus test that Black people suffer with the most, and it's been going on for far too long, that Minister Farrakhan and other Black folks are used as a litmus test for people to decide whether or not you can be a leader. And the worst part about it is this sort of infantilism where you become a child and people are going to tell you exactly which words to use to describe how you feel about someone in your own community. And that's something that I reject. And I understand that I'm going to, that there are people who will never talk to me again. There is going to be, and it has been very painful in terms of the pushback and the hate that I've received. But I have to stand on principle. And my principles are very, very specific. And I think that's something that, I want to talk about today, because this whole idea of denouncing not just Minister Farrakhan, but any person, anyone. First of all, the Women's March was established to address Donald Trump. That was the first person, Miss Teresa Shook. She wanted to fight Trump, which we came in and said that wasn't going to work, because obviously Trump wasn't the beginning of oppression for people of color, particularly in America. So we weren't willing to participate in that. But if you think about just that premise alone, we came in and said, we're not even going to denounce Trump. We're going to denounce the ideas. We're going to denounce the oppression overall, but we can't denounce Trump. Now, let me just give you a visual here so you understand. We're people who are working together. We've never met one another before. I walk up to the Women's March space. First of all, they didn't have a space. Carmen Perez and Harry Belafonte provided space for us to be in. We, they literally, the Gathering for Justice, who you all have supported financially, was the backbone for the Women's March. And a set of principles that Dr. King, who was, one of, obviously, Harry Belafonte's closest friends, someone he helped, a set of principles that he follows are the Kenyan nonviolence tradition. And that Kenyan nonviolence tradition says that we fight systems of oppression and not people who we don't agree with. And why is that important? Because when I'm walking into the Women's March space with a whole bunch of white women that I've never met before, people who said some incredibly racist and ignorant things to us, and Bob Bland will tell you, one of the first things she asked me is, what does race have to do with women's issues? Like, why do we even have to talk about that? That erased me, right, in that moment. I didn't get up and walk away. I didn't denounce her. I sat with her, and I continued to help her grow. And today she understands why that was so ignorant. Well, the reason why we were able to do that is because of these principles. That instead of me fighting Bob or being upset with, did you vote for Trump? Well, was your mother one of the 53% of white women that voted for Trump? We found a way to work together to say these systems of oppression, that is what we have to focus on. Focusing on individualism will never get us where we need to be, but that's easier for people.
Right.
It's easier for folks to focus on fighting you and I getting into it, rather than us asking, well, what is the oppression? What is the oppressive system that we need to address?
Because we've all supported people who we might not agree with all of their views. And then there's people we might not like, but we might agree with some of their views. So
well, Charlamagne and I get into arguments on text message all the time.
Well, not arguments. She just checks me all the time.
No. Well, sometimes you push back every
She
now and
definitely
then.
said, give me your number because I need to check you on some things. And then she was like, no, not just check you, but check you. Yeah.
I walked to the door like, Envy, I don't have your cell
need your
phone number,
information.
and you said some stuff I need to tell you that, so
I welcome it, though.
Yeah,
I
you
want
always
to be
do.
a better human being.
You always do. You always do. And you know what? Unfortunately, Black and brown folks, because of our conditions, because of what we've been through, people don't just get to tell us, folks who particularly are not invested in our liberation, who we should and should not be speaking to and how we should speak about our people. So again, no, I do not agree with Minister Farrakhan and everything that he says and how he speaks. It's not my language. I don't subscribe to that. I don't speak that way. And there are some things that I wish that he would not say. And I am unequivocally standing in that. And he knows it. Trust me, 20 years of my activism, I'm sure that Minister Farrakhan has looked at it a number of times and said, I don't agree with what she's doing. And I don't agree with everything that he's doing. I went to an event which is Savior's Day, which is the highest holy day for the Nation of Islam. And I was sitting in the room. My presence there does not mean that I adopt all of the ideology. And so I have said I don't agree with Minister Farrakhan on a number of things.
And you've always been very clear about that.
Very clear about that. And you know what? And so they said, well, but we want you to say this word and say denounce and say
and you
condemn.
denounce him as a person.
And all of that. And guess what? I have not condemned the men who killed my son's father. I have never denounced them. I've never talked about them in a condemnation context because I'm a person who believes that the person on one side of the gun, the shooter and the victim, that they both deserve our love and attention. That's the type of organizing I do. You guys have seen me up here with Erica Ford a number of times from Life Camp and the Anti-Violence Network. And you know I work with my brother, my son Lennon. And our people, Black people particularly, and brown folks who are locked up in prisons, people who have been through too much because of this country's failure to address the oppression of our communities. We can't be denouncing them. So when I go to a prison and I sit and work with a guy who may have killed someone, I'm not going to come out of there and denounce him. That's not who I am. What I will do is challenge him and say, hey, I don't agree with your behavior, and I want to help you move to a better place so that we have a more fair and equitable society. That's who I am. And no one can make me different than that. Just because you call every school I'm supposed to speak at and tell them I should not be there. People are trying to contact my son's school to interfere with his education based upon this. It's not okay. Now, let me say, anti-Semitism is a problem. It's a real serious problem. And it's one that Black folks particularly need to pay attention to, because there are forces that want to be able to use anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism within the Jewish and Black communities to keep us apart. Because God forbid we ever pulled our power together and really, really started working together. People don't want to see that.
I understand what you're saying, but, we've had politicians up here who've, voted for Trump, endorsed Trump. And it gives me I can't necessarily agree with that, and I don't want to have a lot of those conversations because to me, it shows who you are as a person. Right. And not only that it affects me, but living in the suburbs, it affects my kids even more. Right. Because ever since the whole, Trump came in office, it's a different mentality, a different way of people thinking. My kids have been called niggas. My kids have been called different words and different names, and they can feel it the most. So when I see somebody come up here and they say, yeah, I endorse Trump, I can't really fuck with you because I don't know what you see in him to endorse him.
Well, but see, that's a different situation, and you have every right to feel that way. Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America. So people they try to make these comparisons, but a person who has the power to actually shift our lives, to control our going and coming and the survival of Americans, all Americans, is problematic. But the same white nationalism that Donald Trump stands for is the same white nationalism that seeks to oppress Jews and Black people. And that is why it is incredibly important for us to find ways for our communities to work together. And I understand that when you are a people, when you think about the Jewish community, this is a group of people who's going about their lives, living and believing that they were thriving, and then all of a sudden, very quick, the Holocaust happened to them, and they also know that they are targeted very quick. It's underneath. It's sort of like what do you call it? Underground. You don't really hear much about it, and then all of a sudden Jews are just targeted so quick, and when they are targeted, there is death, there is murder, there is bloodshed, and there's serious pain. And we have to be able to recognize that. And because Black and brown folks are so caught up in our own pain, when you start trying to put anti-Semitism on us, and we reject that, because we're like, hey, first of all, we're not inherently anti-Semitic or homophobic. But Linda and I, as a light-skinned Palestinian woman, we talk about the anti-Black racism that exists even within the Arab community. We talk about how Latinx folks sometimes reject us as Black people. So there are concerns within communities that we need to address, and we cannot allow people to mix this up and divide us based upon personalities. Last thing I'll say, y'all know when I come up here I talk too much, but y'all, this is family. But when you think about Malcolm X, well, Martin Luther King, first of all, who we love Martin Luther King. He was the greatest. And certainly I love Dr. King right now. I love Dr. King. I follow his tradition. I worked for Reverend Sharpton for a long time, and Reverend Sharpton definitely comes out of that King tradition. And so that is more of my foundation, the King tradition. Love him. But what we know is that Dr. King also sat down with Elijah Muhammad, who was the founder of the Nation of Islam. Yep. He sat down with Malcolm X. He worked with these individuals as well, because we understand that the Black experience in America is extremely complex. Mm-hmm. It can't be, unfortunately, because of, again, the failure of this country to address our issues, there's even a need for some of the leaders that we've had. We wouldn't have certain folk. Right. We would need certain leaders if this country would address our concerns the proper way.
Radical issues needed radical Black leaders to address them.
Listen, we've been in a continuous quest for equity and justice in this country. And because of that, there have been voids. And there are different people who have shown up. All leaders are flawed. I'm certainly flawed. You all, whether you want to accept it or not, are leaders up here. Because you're every day out there and people are listening to what you are putting into the universe. You're leaders, and each one of us, we are flawed. So certainly we understand that, and we must call it out. And we must call out in our own communities whenever we see that the bigotry sort of seeps into our minds and our mouths, and we say things that are not right and that are harmful to other individuals. We have to be sensitive to that. So this is not, I think we need to make sure that we hold particularly our Jewish brothers and sisters of color, because they are erased as well from their own community. They will tell you that. And we have to be in relationship with one another and make sure that Black folks and Jews do not become the topic, that there is a division between us, because we just don't have any more space for enemies.
Mm-hmm. Everybody understands the nuance that you're talking about. I think that they're purposely ignoring it because they're trying to undermine all the work that you've done.
That's exactly right.
And I wonder, do you think that the Women's March can be successful with everyone divided?
Well, again, inside of the Women's March, the division is not what people are trying to make it seem. Like, there are people who are working really hard within the Women's March to do great work. And the body of work that we've had for 2 years, we fought the nomination of Kavanaugh. And we had people involved, folks were getting arrested, people who never, ever participated in these types of movements before. Family separation, over 600 folks, 600 women, mainly white women, never participated in movement work. They went to jail to try to bring families back together, participated in civil disobedience. We've been on a number of issues. Shakisha Clemens, the Women's March, supported this young woman who was attacked and abused by police officers in a Waffle House. And we've been on a number of things. So I think, yes, we can continue to work. But I'm going to be really honest. Based upon what is happening to me, to Linda and to Carmen, and by the way, Carmen Perez particularly, like, there is not a mean, a evil bone in that girl's body. Like, the way that people say things, and she just had a baby, and to have people, the types of death threats and the nastiness that we receive, it is so wrong. It's so wrong to see Linda, who is the most loving person, trying to bring people together, raising money for Jewish communities whenever they are harmed, just being there for Black folks. She truly believes that when Black people are free, that Muslim people will also be free. And these are the types of people that I'm working with every day. And for us to be vilified in the ways in which we are, it makes you question whether or not intersectionality is really for us. And to be clear, when people ask me, well, why do you go into this room, or why you talk to this person, or why you around these people? Black women were asking me why I would go work with white women too. Right. After most of your community, the majority of those who voted for a man who is incredibly dangerous to our communities. People ask me, why would you go and work with them? And they said, you need to be clear that these people will destroy you. And certainly what we see happening right now is an attempt to destroy me, but we will not back down. We won't back down. You know, we know this struggle is not going to be easy. It is exactly that. It's a struggle. And I'm in it for the long haul, whatever I have to endure. The bottom line for me is that the work that I was very, very particular about us getting done was that there would not be a new wave of feminism to happen in this country where women of color were not at the center of it. And no matter what I have to take, the abuse, the misunderstanding, the mischaracterization, and the lies, because people have told bold-faced lies on us, I will take that if it means ensuring that my people have a seat at the table.
That's how I know you're a real black leader, though. You're really not a real black leader until they try to get you up out of here.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
What are your thoughts on people who think you should step down from your position?
I think there are people who feel I shouldn't step down.
Right.
And
let's worry about
right,
those.
exactly. So I got to focus on those people who are with me. There are always going to be people who criticize you and people who try to tear you down and make you step down and all of that. But I'm really appreciative to, and I've learned a lot, y'all. Like, this experience has taught me so much, and I've matured. And I'm very appreciative of my Jewish allies who have sat with me to explain what they feel and who have also listened to me. And they started out in a place of like, if you don't denounce, if you don't do this, I'll never talk to you again. And now we're having like living room conversations and we're working together because they're beginning to understand my issues. They are beginning to understand our people. And I think people are also looking at, like, you know, when I came off The View, if you look at the comments, there's some division there.
Yes.
There's a lot of black and brown folks who are like, listen, sis, we appreciate you, first of all, not for what you said, but for what you didn't say. Because y'all know I can go to hell off. Like, I'm not one of these people that really control, you know, whatever.
That's why you passing it to the other young lady. What's her name? That's Bob, right?
Bob.
That's why you passing it to her. Like, you handle
I
this
was
from
cool.
Cleveland.
Like, y'all handle your, get your girl.
Talk to your people,
Because if
Bob.
I got to get your girl, it ain't going to go. But they would have, today, the story would be Tamika Mallory is an angry black woman.
black
woman.
And that's what they wanted to do.
Yes.
So I wouldn't give them that.
Has anyone else been asked to denounce another leader or anybody else that's besides you guys? Let's just say some of the other women, some of the white women. Have they been asked to denounce anyone that they've been allies to? That
No, I mean,
troublesome?
no. They don't know nor care or even try to find out who they're like. Because sometimes you might have to ask, will you denounce your mother, father, grandmother? Like, that's how deep it is. Because if you're talking about who supports Trump and all of that, the denunciation stuff is deep. And, you know, I'm going to err on the side of caution. But based upon the family that Meghan McCain comes from, she's the last person that should be trying to tell people who they should and should not denounce or condemn or what have you. So, you know, I'm be careful because they would love to take something that I say and make it a different thing. But no, white folks, Bob stands there sometimes. She's like, what about me? Like, I'm the one who actually made the comment, and they'll put it in my mouth because there is a specific focus on demonizing women of color.
I've read this article before, but Meghan McCain's husband runs a site called The Federalist, and they have these far right-wing views, and I've seen her distance herself from her husband's own views.
Well,
so,
and they still married.
Yeah.
Right.
She should denounce him.
Did she
That's
denounce
what I'm
him?
saying.
That's the question.
Like,
Did
so
she
she
denounce him?
understands nuance, so it doesn't make any sense to
Right.
me.
No, they understand it. It's very clear. They understand it when they talk about Trump. They understand it when they talk about their own history. They understand it when they talk about, again, their mom who may have voted for Donald Trump. They understand it. They are able to make sense of nuance whenever it comes to protecting white women and protecting white folks in general. Because the mere fact that you could even stand next to and support a man who would separate families, children from their mothers. And just, I mean, we could go on with so much that this country has done to our people. And the fact that they would even be a part of a party that continues to participate in such is deplorable. But we're actually still willing to work with them. There was no prerequisite for you to get involved with the Women's March. You could show up and say, you know, one of the issues they kept bringing up yesterday was this whole concern around pro-lifers. Pro-lifers want to be able to feel like they are part of the Women's March. Our principles are pro-choice. But in that pro-choice, we believe pro-life is a part of it. That means that you have the choice to be pro-life. Right. But if you look at it from the flip side, it doesn't give you choice because pro-life means there's no choice.
Correct.
So who's actually the liberal? Who's actually the person that is actually trying to open up the doors for everyone? And here's the thing. Black women don't have the luxury of telling people they have to be pro-life. Because our communities sometimes are not set up in a way where people are able to have children. Right? We got gun violence. We have poverty. We have lack of education. We ain't got no job. We have a lot of things going on. So, it's a luxury to say that you are pro-life. And I support that. But you can't force that on me. So, again, they get their own nuance, but they just don't get it when it comes to us because they realize that when you look at a Latinx woman, a Muslim woman, a black woman standing next to a white woman and other women, Jewish women and trans women and really working to bring all these different folks together, that we have the potential to shift this world in a way that this country is not prepared to give up its power on behalf of people who are marginalized.
Yeah, that's why I don't understand why people don't see the blatant divide and conquer tactic that's happening to the Women's March. Like you have to see that coming.
I mean, it's been happening since the beginning. We've been through so much. We invited a number of congressional members and senators to speak at our convention that happened in October of last year. And it was the first time in 40 years that a women's convention was held. We had Maxine Waters we named the convention. What was her slogan at that time? Reclaiming my time. We called, named it after her. She was coming on Saturday. We pumped it up. It was a big deal. As soon as Bernie Sanders confirmed that he was coming, he just happened to be able to come the day before, which was on Friday. They destroyed us. That we were giving a man a platform. I mean, it was all over the news. We had organizations making statements against us. Meanwhile, they just erased the fact that the whole conference was set up around Maxine Waters. So this has been going on for a long time. After Linda Sarsour spoke at the first Women's March, they started on, her being anti-Semitic. Just the mere fact that she would stand up there and say Assalamu alaikum is problematic. That she said, I'm Palestinian and I'm my grandmother's wildest dreams because I'm able to stand here and be free to speak and say whatever I want with the hijab on my head. They went crazy. Death threats went up. So that's what people need to understand. This is actually painful to us. Like, I literally have to travel with the security team that my son coordinates for all of us, as and again, Bob is not walking around with death threats, but she's standing with us every day. So why is it that people are only talking about blowing out our brains? What is that all about? So
because y'all are women of color.
Because we're the women of color, and because people see us as animals anyway. So why not just shoot us dead? Why not just kill us?
Now we got a march coming up.
That's on Saturday.
Talk about the march a little bit. And how can people get involved?
So Saturday, this is the third annual Women's March. We're going back to Washington, D.C. As y'all know, so much is happening in this country, and we're actually releasing this week our policy platform, things that people can actually fight for in their local communities that really protects all communities. So it's a very bold policy platform that will be out, and I encourage people to look at it. Some folks feel like, well, you guys had marches and you did civil disobedience, but how did this actually translate into something that we can touch and feel? Well, right. You know what? Over 100 women were elected to Congress and in the midterm elections, and it was historic. So we're going to keep doing that work. So on Saturday, we'll be in Washington, D.C. People will be marching all over the country as well. So you can go to a march near you. You can go to womensmarch.com. That's womensmarch.com to get information about how to start, where to go. Of course, there'll be speakers. We'll also be physically marching, and we're asking people to come out, and we will be there. Rain, snow, sleet, doesn't matter. The movement doesn't stop because the weather isn't working out for us.
How do people donate financially too?
People should go to womensmarch.com, and certainly we need the donations. We need the support, and so individual donations have been sort of the foundation for Women's March, and we ask people to participate. And I hope that women of color particularly see what we're going through to hold the line on behalf of our communities, and that they also support us because we do need that support.
And dress warm this week, and it's supposed to snow. So dress warm, head out there. They're going out there regardless of the weather. So
you're giving the keynote too at UNC Asheville, right?
I'm giving a keynote at UNC Asheville. There's petitions against me to try to keep me from speaking. But actually, a Jewish woman of color is going with me to help address the issues. I'm meeting with the community there as well. And of course, my son will be there performing and, being there to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
How do you focus to even give the keynote?
Well, I'm going to be talking about how, you don't know Dr. King because it's during King weekend, and it's actually, can you believe that there are people from that particular area who have said that I somehow do not have the credibility to speak in Dr. King's honor. So now other folks get to determine for us as Black people who Dr. King died fighting for a person like me, that I don't somehow, I don't fit into the King narrative, the King weekend, the King moment. I reject that, and I think that it's very offensive to have other people dictate for us in our communities who our leaders are, number one, and number two, who we can speak on behalf of, and how we can contextualize our own story. But that's because people want to romanticize Dr. King. They want to make Dr. King this docile leader who, was just about bringing people together. Certainly he was about that, and we are as well. We want to make sure that all at the end, what a victory would look like is that I could depend on a white woman and any other woman to stand up for me and for my son and for everyone who is sitting in this room. That's what it looks like, the ultimate victory. But Dr. King was also very, very radical. And at one point in life, he said something that I think is really important, that it was the white moderates, those who don't say enough, those who are unwilling to really speak out. He wasn't talking about the radicals. He wasn't talking about the KKK. He was talking about those people who claim to be his friend that were not doing enough to stand up on behalf of our people. That's who he was concerned about. So Dr. King was extremely radical, and my speech is going to be about you don't really know the real King.
That's real.
Well, I'm glad you came up here, Tamika, to clear a lot of things up, because I've been reading a lot of propaganda and things,
reading lies.
Well, you wasn't clearing it up with us. We know who you are.
Right.
Well, I want everyone to
That's
hear.
right. Thank you. We appreciate you, sis, and thanks for supporting the Women's March. And, if you can't be with us in D.C. on Saturday, the New York City March is happening at Foley Square. A sister by the name of Agunda. She is amazing. She's an African sister who is the head of Women's March New York City, and they will be marching here in New York. Women's March, not Women's March other folk. Women's March New York City will be at Foley Square this Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.
Well, thank you for joining us.
With the New York Immigration Coalition, I have to make sure to say that they've been so incredible in terms of partnering with our New York City March. Brother Murad.
Thank you for joining us and stopping through.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, it's Tamika Mallory. It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.